Alright, hi everyone, how are we all tonight? I do apologize for the lateness of the stream. This was scheduled at 9 PM. It's 9:10, which I don't think I really care too much, but I was napping. I had a pretty big archery day. I'm pretty tired, and I completely forgot that I scheduled this for 9 PM. Normally I do it at 11, and I thought maybe it was 9:30. So I woke up, checked, it's 9 o'clock, and went, oh yeah, gotta do that. So I've been preparing supper. I've got some sesame balls, which are red bean filling, and I've got some matcha green tea latte. For those who always wonder about my archery juice, I'm a little tired, to be honest. Had a pretty big archery day. Had around 15, nearly 20 people on the line today. Ran that. Lots of good people shooting. Very nice day. So big archery day. Very happy with that. Shot in my Stingray, the one I just reviewed. Again, beautiful bow. Very nice. Thanks to Southwest Archery for sending me that to have a look at. And I've got one more longbow to check out. That's the Southwest Scorpion. And of course, I was doing a bit more work on the Chaser Python. That's the big news right now, is the Chaser Python. I'm gonna eat this eventually, don't worry guys. The progress so far is that I've managed to get it up and running, obviously. I've put everything on, I've got the stabilizer set up, I've got the center shot done, and I did a bit of bare shaft tuning with a set of spare arrows which I had, so I kind of roughly know what to get. So I tend to buy the arrows that I think I need over the next few days. Hopefully next week we'll get it more tuned up. And I'm slowly documenting the process. I'm not releasing the video yet. I want to figure out the best editing sequence for the video. It's not going to be comprehensive, unfortunately. I know some people really wanted a start-to-finish advanced tuning tutorial. This won't be yet. I think at some point I will have to make one, but this is actually quite a getaway of getting the bow up and running. If you want to see prop tutorials on how to tune a bow, there's one good live stream by Jake Kaminsky. There's also a very good tutorial by Chris Hill, Olympic archer. He walks through all the technical elements. We kind of do quite ghetto, so I don't really document this process. I will retrospectively talk about it and point out a few things, but the challenge in actually getting the Python up and running for Project Python is that on one hand you want to show people what you do, on the other hand you want to shoot the bow. So yeah, I don't want to be hamstrung in like taking too long to use the Python, because it's my competition bow now and I'm going to shoot tomorrow, and I'm torn between whether to use the Python or my win and win. So I want to use the Python, but I don't have the right gear, I don't have the right arrows. I mean, the arrows work, but they're not well tuned for it. They're too long, so I can't use the clicker. So there are lots of problems with using my Python, but I want to use it. So that's where we are at. So how are we all today? Hello to our viewers. We got Hex Gaming Kitty, how are you? Jono, Starlight, Sherry, welcome. Miko, welcome back. Sorry, I'm gonna finish my sesame bun thing, red bean thing. Oh. Yeah, I feel kind of headache for some reason. Probably not hydrated enough. So, we've got a few questions to go through, and you're probably enjoying to watch me eat live. So let's go to our first set of questions. Sorry, meeting. So our first set of questions will come from Facebook. So, oh man, I gotta be eating first. All right, so let's go. Let me finish this red bean bun, and then we'll go through the rest of the questions. So while we're doing that, how are we? Awesome. Feel free to ask some questions if you want. I'll be munching a bit for the first few minutes. Hey Nathan. What's on the reviews? Yes, I've got the XM1 lined up. I've got these voiceovers for that. I'll be doing the T62M1 as well at some point. Oh, the T62M, whatever that is. Apparently, War Thunder or Guardian, they're changing their partnership model, so it's, I don't know, I'm getting mixed messages over what's actually happening with the War Thunder aspect. I mean, I'm running out of vehicles to review already. I've been playing the game much anyway. But changing the system so there's not like 2 tanks or something. So I don't know. Apparently, it's a bit harder for us to get things to review for War Thunder, but doesn't matter. Yeah, target for you. Nom nom nom. Thank you. Can you fit a Hoyt grip on SF bow? I think you can. I'm pretty sure that there is a universal thing. Not all grips fit. I think it might. I personally don't know about the grips. Which Challenger, Ruski? The low tier Challenger or the modern Challenger? And what's changed? Alright. Be ashamed to I just literally hated this. It's nice and warm. Be ashamed to like cool down. Huh. Alright. Enough eating my balls. Let's get some questions done. Alright. Oh well, I'm tired. Recommendations how to train? For the first few sessions, just shoot. How to train? I mean, like just what you should do is break down your training into separate components. One is your technique and form, and that's something you can do on a lighter bow, and you can do under instruction ideally, or like focus on form. Another part is like strength and endurance. A mistake which a lot of people make when starting out is they do both at the same time, and the result is that they struggle physically to draw and hold the bow, and as a consequence, they can't achieve proper form. So it becomes an uphill battle where neither strength nor form is there, but they're training both at the same time. What you should do is think about firstly your technique comes first, then your strength. And you can always train strength independently of form. You don't need to do both at once. So just think about that. I was working with someone today. He's a new archer, and he did what, most instructors would cringe at this. He did his first session at the club, but he had already ordered a new bow, and it's a 50-pound reflex longbow. And any instructor would roll their eyes and go, "Oh my goodness, there's no way you can do that." And I've got a feeling I'm right in this case, because he was someone who didn't have enough experience. He found a 35-pound bow, not say difficult, but challenging, and has bought himself a 50-pound bow for the sake of hunting. And what I mean, he was quite a good person to look at in terms of like a good attitude. So he wanted to learn. He wasn't like an arrogant guy who was going to hunting. He actually wanted to learn. It's his first day, so he's a little nervous. But he, I spent like an hour or two afterwards to talk him through technique and show him and demonstrate. That the point I'm going to get out of here is that you can't just buy a 50-pound bow and use that to as a training tool. You can't just passively increase your strength while doing archery. Like if you want to use high draw weights, you actually need to actively train. That includes strength and conditioning, not just technique. But again, the thing is that if you can't physically control the bow comfortably, then you can't train form technique. That's just impossible. Like, you can't do that. So I would advise, my advice for training, just initially, is try to work on your form and technique first, and then go on to increase your strength as you do more and more archery. That's my general feedback for you in terms of how to train. It's a broad question, but that's what I would recommend. Siku, what is a bad average good score per round for a 7-meter target? 70 meters, standard WA, Sorry. Well, good can be easy to measure, right? So, for 720 score, I think the minimum qualifying score for the Olympic Games, so to make the team, I think a good score is around 640, I think. So 630 to 640 would be considered good and enough for, perhaps state or national selection. The top archers would be like 680, reaching 700. It's the record. It's actually not. I can't remember what the world record is, but yeah, like 700 is an insane score. That's like compound level, 700 out of 720. So a good score would be around 640. That'd be a minimum qualifying score. So that's what I would expect a good score to be. An average score for 70 meters would be, I'd say, around probably 600 to 700 would be average. Average, I'd say, yeah, 500 to 600 would be average. So 600 plus is good. 500, 450 to 600 might be average, and below that is, I guess, bad. So if you end up missing the target or scoring lots of whites or ones and twos, then that would probably be a bad score. Average is if you hit like an average of 5 or above, I reckon that'd be kind of close to average. And good would be like an average of like 8, especially 9 and above. So that's what I would recommend as your benchmark. But yeah, anything above 600 would be good for a 7-meter round. Oh, someone has a 180-pound longbow. That's really interesting. Actual war bow. Jin. So you looked at your riser recently. There's a medium scarring and scratches on the corner of the shelf, and you're using a rest. I'm assuming this means I should get a plunger. Yes. What it means, if you're talking about the shelf, okay, the shelf is caused either by a knock point that is too low or perhaps too high, or an arrow that is too stiff or too soft, so the spine might not be quite right. A plunger doesn't necessarily solve that, though it is much easier to tune with a plunger. Someone asked me today at the club about why you have a plunger in the first place, and the plunger acts as a spring, as you know. It's a cushion, it's a buffer. But the thing with the plunger is that it's much more adjustable, which means that you can get a set of arrows and you have a much wider range to tune with. Whereas if you shoot directly off the shelf with no plunger, that means that you are that your arrows aren't properly tuned. But unfortunately, there's not much you can do about that because there's no cushion to make that fine adjustment. So either the arrows are perfectly in tune or they're not. That said, though, you said that there's scratches on your shelf. So are you shooting off the shelf or are you shooting off a rest? Because a plunger only works for rest. You don't put a plunger when you're shooting off the shelf. So I'm curious what you're talking about there. If you're using a rest and there's scratches on the shelf, which part, the back or the front? And that's my question for you, Jin. So, now that I've finished munching on at least one sesame ball, 3 more here, but I don't want to munch on camera. I do want to actually drink something first. I feel dehydrated. Oh, I needed that. Good. Alright, so let's go to our first set of questions from Facebook first. Alright, so we have a few questions. We'll go through these quite quickly. So the first one is a very good one from Jules. Should the release be a reflex on the clicker going off, or should you consciously register the clicker going off? Maybe let your sight pin settle in the middle and then start the release. Very nice question. So again, the question is should you release on the clicker, or should you let it register and then let go? The answer should be that the release should be subconscious. So the way archers train with the clicker, with general freestyle archery, is that you automate the process. You draw and you expand until the clicker goes off, and then you let go. It's reflexive. So the short answer is yes, it is reflexive. It doesn't mean you should always let go when the clicker goes off. You need to recognize if you're doing it right or wrong. So if you know that's going to be a bad shot, you don't let go, you restart. But it should be a reflex. The thing with if you don't let go on the clicker, you risk the risk you have is, well, what's the point of using the clicker? Like, you end up collapsing, you end up overextending. You're meant to let go when the clicker goes off. I know some people will hang on to it, but that's probably not the most optimum way to be using the clicker. I mean, every trained archer, especially at top level, will release reflexively on the clicker. The idea of keeping the sight pin on target should not happen after the clicker. The sight pin should be on target by the time you reach full draw. So you're keeping the sight pin on the target, you're drawing, you anchor, and you expand while keeping the sight pin on target. When the click goes off, the sight pin is still on target, and then you release. There is a bit of float, but the idea, you keep that sight pin on target, you let it float, but you're constantly expanding, and your brain will handle the rest. So you will let go when the click goes off. So yeah, it's a reflex. You're not meant to ignore the clicker. There is some adult club who does that, and I think it's a terrible way to shoot, because he basically puts the clicker on, he pulls through it, he ignores it for like several seconds, and then he yanks the string because there's no part of the process where he registers the clicker's gone off. And again, I'll question, why use the clicker if you're going to ignore it? So it's meant to be an indicator. The moment you hit that spot, that's a sweet spot, you let go. So the clicker is reflexive. Next one. Let's see. This is a question from Eric, and I can't really answer this a whole lot. What's this? Another one. I'm trying to find. There's a lot of questions there. I'll go in the wrong order. Let's go to the Unison one here. So how would you compare the toe point Unison, which is currently available for AliExpress, to the premium? Okay, I might save this for a review specifically, but the general impressions of the toe point Unison, which is currently being sold on AliExpress and I believe on eBay as well. Toe point is such a new riser that I believe toe point really needs me to like put it out there. The Unison, in my opinion, it's a pretty nice affordable riser. It is the equivalent, in my opinion, to, I'd say, the SF or the WNS Premium, less so than the Forged. The Forged is a somewhat different kind of bow. It's a forged aluminium bow, whereas the Unison is a CNC machine bow. So it's a nice production, a nice manufacturing. I mean, I'd say it's probably premium to forged level. I don't think it's quite forged level. I think the Unison is a bit lower than that. The forged is a bit more expensive. The Unison is a little cheaper, and the finishing is a little rough. So you got a few sharp ridges and edges. So it's definitely a step above the $100 risers like the Axiom. I wouldn't quite put the Unison on the same level as the Forge, but I haven't shot it yet, by the way. So that's just my preliminary thoughts. It's quite an affordable riser, and like we said there, I mean, it's what, $185 US for the riser. That's quite cheap, honestly. What was that? The price you quoted? So AliExpress, you can get it for $185 US. Is cheap for a riser. And yeah, 185 is, in my opinion, just at the moment, the Unison at this price point would be good value for money. Again, like, a typical riser would be around like $250 to $300 US for a decent mid-range riser. The Unison's priced below that. But it's a pretty decent riser. It's good enough. It's not like the Toe Point R2 or the R3 kind of like entry-level models. This is a proper target riser. And I think there's some promise to it. Not so much as a top-level bow, but more so as a mid-level bow. Am I still on holidays, Jono? No, I'm not. This is our second week of school term, so maybe that's why I'm tired. Perhaps I'm, back to teaching. Back to our question. So that's Eric's first question down there. Another one, the Toe Point is extruded 6063T6, like the Canadian Eros. There's no question. Okay. Is there a question? I think they're comparing like rises. I'm not sure what exactly what the question was. And we've got a few answers here. Is the toe point extruded 6063? I don't know off the top of my head. There's there's not much information because the bow is very new. So if someone can help me out, I actually don't know. I think Dan has the right answer. The same design, perhaps. But I'm not sure about the materials personally. I've got it somewhere, but I don't actually know myself. Last one, the effect of damaged veins at different distances. Ooh, that's a pretty big one. Damaged veins. Alright, so the thing with damaged veins, at short distance, it is not going to make a fantastic amount of difference. More so, like at close distance, you can shoot 2 veins and they'll be fine. Okay, so if you have one ripped vein or you lose a vein and you shoot 2, it'll actually be okay for 10 meters. I mean, like, you know, when our beginners shoot, they lose veins all the time because they hit things, it comes off, or we did a very bad glue job and it comes off. But the thing with that is, when you shoot a short distance, there's not enough like time for the veins to do the correction. So the arrows will still fly, not accurately at long distance, but still fly decently at close distance to maybe mid distance. But depending on the damage to the vein, it will have different effects. Let's grab an arrow for an example. Okay, so here we have an Eastern Lights power flight. And here's an example. I didn't plan this, by the way, but just want to mention about arrow damage. So here we have an arrow where we have... It actually looks like the veins here have been sliced. I don't think it's damaged, but let's say you've got a ripped vein like this. So you've got an undamaged vein over here, and you've got a couple of damaged veins. This will actually fly pretty decently. Now you might think, oh, but there's an uneven amount of airflow over the veins and won't spin consistently. That is correct. It's not going to be uniform, but an arrow like this, despite the damage to the vein, should still be accurate up to mid-distance. At long distance, that's when you start really seeing the effects of damage and inconsistencies amplified because of long distance. But this will fly okay. I wouldn't use it in competition, but if you had to shoot this should actually fly fairly decently. So this kind of damage where the shape of the vein is mostly intact is okay. And in fact, what you'll see is that people with damaged veins will probably just tear the rip off rather than leave it ripped. Because here's the thing, which will affect the arrow flight the most. It isn't so much the surface area that's going to affect the arrow flight, but if you have a vein which is partially ripped, I don't have one with me right now, but if you have a partially ripped vein, that's going to cause more damage or more problems for your flight, because what happens is let's say this vein is torn, okay, and it's torn, let's say at this point here. What happens is that the airflow will hit the tear, and then the vein will flap around, and this will cause what you might call helicoptering. So instead of spinning straight, it will start going like this because the airflow has been disrupted. So a partially torn fletching will cause the arrow to gyrate more in flight. So in that case, if it's partially torn, Archer will simply just tear it off. Either by tearing off partially, resulting in one of these kind of torn fletchings, or just ripping the whole fletching off. It's probably better for the arrow to rip a damaged fletching off completely rather than leave it on and just having 2 fletchings. So that actually works quite decently. That's the effect of damaged arrows, especially at distance. So if you have a partially torn fletching, it's better to complete the tear and shoot like this, or remove the vein completely and try and make deal with it. But having a vein which is partially torn is going to cause more detrimental effects on the arrow. Good question though. Thank you, Eric. Sorry about that. Quick question, I think, from Hex. How many tournaments have I actually won? Apart from club shoots, I haven't actually won anything above that. The club's quite small. We don't have many archers, so on a decent day I should be dominating because I'm not the only one or I'm the most experienced one. But depends on the day. I've won club shoots, but nothing above that. but I don't really compete much. I'm just too busy doing other things than competing. Hello to Generic, welcome. And Sebastian with a question here. What is an easy way to prevent scratches on the riser where the sight mount sits? Very good question. Really the only way to do so is clear tape, as you mentioned. That's probably the best way. But it looks ugly, which a lot of people agree. Yeah, I personally, in my opinion, you just deal with it. The screws will scratch the paint on the riser where it mounts, and that's an expected part of part you put using the sight. And as long as the sight is mounted, you're not going to see it. So yeah, quite a few of the top archers and the pro shooters probably won't care about it that much. If it matters a lot, then you can use clear tape. If you don't like clear tape, then either you can choose to just forget about it, or maybe find a different material. But I don't really have an alternative, because I personally don't care about the scratches where the sight mounts. The sight will stay there unless I take it off. Okay, hi Alexander. Alright, man, I'm still dehydrated. Man, that's a pretty bad nap. I didn't mean to nap, so I left the light on. So I'm just like, I'm there for like 2 or 3 hours. I just like this bright light in my eyes. So I'm really kind of groggy right now. Not the best way to recover. Okay, next one. So 3 questions from Eric. Next one, Rafael. Greetings from Brazil. So you bought your bow a month ago and started instinctive shooting. The bow I bought came with a sight, but I really don't bother with it in the first few weeks because I was getting used to bow weight and getting the form right. I actually achieved good form, correcting some problems I had when I borrowed bows at a shooting club. This week I tried to use the sight and it was a total mess. The string started hitting my arm again, the release was poor, and I heard the arrow hitting the bow sometimes. After an hour shooting, I got it better, but not as good as the sight. Is it common to take a while to regain alignment when you start using the sight? And you have some tips. Okay, so let's do the first part. Good question, Raphael. Thank you for that. So, is it normal to struggle with using the sight when starting out? The answer is yes. Especially if you've built your technique on shooting instinctively. One of the misconceptions that people have about modern equipment is that a sight would automatically make you shoot better, and it doesn't. This is such a big mistake. That's why people say, oh, it's so easy. No, the sight doesn't make you shoot better. The sight gives you a reference point. If you don't know how to use the reference point, then you will shoot worse. And this is what I tell people a lot, actually. The people who, yeah, like I said, people who think sights make it easy doesn't work that way. So, as I said before, the thing with sights is that you need to calibrate your sight correctly. That means that you need to understand the center shot of your bow, as well as where the sight is in relation to the arrow. And what you may be finding, like the sight itself shouldn't cause you to shoot poorly. So if you're hitting your arm, or if you're not clearing the bow properly, that's probably to do with the technique, not the sight. But what you may be doing is that you are assuming the sight is correctly calibrated. So putting it on and just leaving it there. Either the sight is not correctly aligned or set for your bow, or your string picture is not correct for that particular sight. So I'm not sure what your string picture is, but if you're not lining the string up correctly with the sight, then or you're trying to change your form to make the sight line up, that's what's causing the problems. And I think, given that you're talking about hitting your arm and other things, and that might be reflective of poor release and so on, that I think is the problem. So I think that with the sight you're using, you haven't correctly set the sight, or you haven't correctly used technique to use the sight with the right alignment. And you're basically changing parts of your form to make the sight line up, but because of that, you're shooting poorly. Therefore, bad releases, bad alignment. So it's not abnormal for someone to struggle with a sight initially, but if you're having like detrimental technique effects, like hitting yourself and so on, then that's likely due to the sight, or you're changing yourself to match the sight rather than calibrating the sight to match your form. That's likely to cause. A couple of quick comments in the chat there. Yeah, so as Bubbly Big mentioned, it's very similar to use things like clickers and stabilizers. A lot of people focus too much on the new gear, forget the basics. Absolutely right. So just because you put a stabilizer on, or a sight, or a clicker, doesn't mean you shoot better. You will have to adjust to it. So that's fairly normal. But as I said before, I think that the source of the problem here would be that you may be changing or adapting your style and form to make the sight work, which is actually not what you should be doing. Try to get the sight calibrated correctly, aligned correctly, and make that match your correct form. So your form shouldn't change when you use the sight. If what you're doing is working and you put a sight on, that shouldn't change how you shoot. If you're changing the way you shoot, that's what you need to address. As a previous question, as Kyle, I have heard of Archery Tag. There is a place here in Melbourne which has Archery Tag. I haven't been there before, so Archery Tag, given that I haven't done it, in my opinion, is not an activity aimed at archers. Archery Tag is a fun, casual activity. There are some leagues for it, but Archery Tag is a game. It's like basically laser tag or paintball. You have some people might seriously do it, but it's not really archery so much as it's tag with bows. So it's not really, it doesn't matter if you're a good archer or not. Archery tag is not reliant on skill. It's more reliant on teamwork and reflex rather than skill. So yeah, that's what I think of archery tag. Could it be fun? I haven't done it, so I can't comment, but it's much different to what archery actually is. Celtic Wolf, you've been debating whether or not to upgrade your sight. Apart from a higher quality and more precise adjustment, are there any other benefits? Really, when you're buying an expensive sight, what you're paying for is more quality, so better materials. What you get is finer adjustments, yes, and it's also a near guarantee that the sight will never ever come loose. The main difference between a low end to mid end to high end is basically how secure the sight block is. The El Cheapo $50 sights are basically like 3 screws. They'll come loose, they'll rattle, they'll drop. When you get to mid-range, you have more screws locking it in, therefore they're less likely to come loose, then it might still come loose. And you have other mechanisms like spring tension and so on. So as you get higher up the sight price brackets, then you get what you might say more stable, more secure sights. And at the same time, more options for fine adjustments. The very top end, like the Shibuya or the Axel, which I'm using right now, they've got a lot of micro adjustment, but they've got, you could say there are multiple redundancies. So there are like 2, 3 or more locking mechanisms to make sure the sight does not move. One thing I haven't reviewed the Axel sight yet, but I've filmed a few things. One thing the Axel sight, for example, which is apart from the Shibuya, is that there is a quick release on the sight, but to even activate that, you need to reduce the tension on the spring that holds the thing onto the sight bar. So you have like 2 or 3 steps to move the thing. There's a micro adjustment, but to ensure the sight doesn't move, when the spring is fully tense, I can't budge the quick release no matter how hard I try. Okay, so when I'm putting my full energy of strength into moving the sight block by hand with the manual release, with the spring tension on maximum, I actually can't move it. And you can imagine that if you're shooting over a prolonged period, a bow vibrating is nowhere near as strong as me pushing the sight off, and I can't move the sight. So you can be 100% assured that the sight will not change at all. That's basically what you're paying for. Now, in some cases, in your case, for example, it may be overkill. Like the amount of tension and security is going to be too high for you. So you don't have to spend big on a sight. But what you do get for the very top sights, the Shibuya Ultima and the Axel Achieve, is a sight which does not move at all. And that's what you're paying for, guaranteed. Very good construction, very good fine adjustments, but more importantly for a sight user, the sight doesn't budge. That's what you get. Do you need that? Not necessarily, But there is a difference between a $100 sight and a $300 sight. That's the answer to your question. Alright, sorry. I haven't used the barebow wave, unfortunately. I've seen a few leads, but I haven't seen the... Actually, no. There was one person who came to the club last week who did have a barebow wave. I didn't use it, so I can't comment on the wave, but I have used the lead. Mortem's answering Celtic Wolf's question, yes. Hex Gaming, yes. My students do know I have a YouTube channel. It's a bit of a meme at the school, or a running gag. Like years ago, and the funny thing was that like people didn't know I had one, so it was kind of like a nice trivia to know that I do. Now it's common knowledge. Like everybody knows I've got a channel. Like it's so like it's like the thing with being like a YouTube celebrity, you can call me that, and being a high school teacher, so the kids really love celebrities. They have their favorite YouTubers, and it's me. So I'm like a walking meme. So like I know all the memes on my channel. Like I make my own memes and I make fun of myself. So it's a running gag. And like every year I'll do a speech in front of the school for like the award ceremony, and I'll crack a YouTube jokes, and the whole school gets it, right? You get 1,000+ kids, and I'll say thank you everyone, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll walk off, and the whole auditorium explodes because everyone knows I'm a YouTuber, and it's like you are taking the piss out of your own channel because there's like YouTube Live, right? So you have there are typical YouTubers. And you know they're doing it for content. They have like the Jake Pauls and the Logan Paulers and all the big channels. And I'll just like me myself like doing these things at school. And the kids love it. We always joke about it. So it's a bizarre thing to be a big name, or like a relatively big name YouTuber in a very small school. Quite funny. But yeah, people do know. Where was I? How to choose arrow spines. Very good. Arrow spine is... I was doing that recently for my bow, okay? Arrow spine is based off your draw weight. And what you do is you check the arrow spine charts. We'll do it quickly. I'll set up for you. I was doing this yesterday to pick my arrows. You need to buy before I forget, because I completely forgot about it. So this is... Let's see if we get this right. So over here is an outdated version. Let's get a new one. I keep on forgetting the Eastern arrow chart. Here we go. Google Eastern arrow selection chart. That's what I want. Okay, so I'll give you an example of what we're talking about. So we flip over to Firefox, which I didn't finish loading. Here we go. So let's say this is the chart they're looking for. And every manufacturer, every arrow manufacturer has their own charts. It's actually not that hard to realize. So what you have in the middle are the arrow lengths. If you know your draw length, you add about 1 inch, and that's roughly what the arrow would be. Okay, so for example, I've got like a 25.5 inch draw length. I might get a 27-inch arrow. Might be too long, so I cut it down. But for safety, I'll get a slightly longer arrow, because you can always cut down an arrow, but you can't make an arrow grow. So let's say I've got 25.5 inch draw length, and I'll pick a 27-inch arrow. My draw weight on a recurve bow, compound on this side on the left, but recurves on the right. I'll match my draw weight. So let's zoom in, sorry. So for my current Python, I've got a 36-pound limb set, but at my draw length, which I measure, it's around 33.5 pounds, which is actually a pretty nice limb. Like, you don't lose that much. So I've got around 33-pound draw weight. So I'm right in the middle of this bracket. I want a 27-inch arrow. Maybe 26-inch. No, I want 26-inch arrow. I've got a pretty short draw length. So let's say 33-pound, 26-inch arrow, T2. You go to the T2 table, which is here, T2, and that's your spine there. So these arrows would be a match to my draw weight. In this case, for my 33-pound Python with Uka limbs, that would correspond to an 810 spine carbon 1 or 950 Apollo. or any of these spines. So if I'm looking for example an ACE on X10, it might be 750 or 780, for example. In fact, my X10s should actually work from my Python. I shoot 750s, don't I? I shoot 750 X10s. Oh, do I? Or is it 800? I can't remember now. But yeah, they're pretty close to this one. So yeah, the ones I tested today were 800 carbon express predators, and they were decent but too soft, but they weren't cut. So I know from both testing real arrows and from using the spine chart that this should match what I'm using. So that's how you find your spine rating. Is you get your draw weight, you match it to the length of the arrow, and you line it up with the charts. You will have to factor things in like point weight. That's a very big impact on your spine. But you assume like the default arrow point for each one. If you change that, then it will soften or stiffen the spine. But for the most part, just assume the standard point, and that will get you very close to what you need. It won't be perfect necessarily. You will have to fine tune with some extra bare shaft tuning and so on to know exactly the right match. But to pick the right arrow, you go through that process. So that's how you would find your spine. There's also the online selector. Yeah, there are automatic search engines which can do that for you. That's the way which we do it mostly, even in shops. We'll do this. Alright, question sorry, Mr. Before, from Hi Kitson. I'll talk about the Python later. I missed the question before. So that was from Mikkel, how to choose arrow spines. Question from Abdul. Are fiberglass arrows good for 20-pound PVC but for backyard shooting? Yeah, they're fine. If you're using fiberglass for like a proper bow, then they're not that good really. They're cheap, they're affordable, they're expendable, but they're not good arrows. So if you tend to throw away arrows or just break stuff, then yeah, fiberglass is cheap. But if you want to get a proper bow, I wouldn't recommend fiberglass arrows. Yeah, okay, yeah. So fiberglass is okay for like PVC bows, but apart from that, I wouldn't recommend them. You're welcome, Celtic Wolf. That's my best explanation for a site. I mean, back when I made my site video, I only had like 3 or 4 sites. The Shubui was the best one. Now I have the Axel. I can validate that. They're like different sites, high manufacturing, high costs. It's just a better site. It's just more secure, and that's something which you don't want to doubt. Especially a very subtle change. If the site drifts and you don't realize it, you could tank your score. Sorry. Interesting, about the Marbo wave, because I've seen it, and I think the wave would be the equivalent to a forged. Honestly, it's cheaper than a forged, but I think it's just as good, if not better, in terms of quality. I mean, forged doesn't necessarily mean it's better. Ouch. So I found a bare X10 shaft. Oh man, that's like $40 right there. Yes, I've shot the bow. Yeah. Bow is good. I actually have a video. I'm going to post a video a bit later. It's my initial shots. I mean, I'm doing some tuning as we go along. The Python is amazing. The choice in aluminium, it uses the 7075 aluminium. It's very stable, very strong. It's excessively strong. Deadens vibration. Very quiet bow actually, and plus I spent time tuning it, so it's properly set up. But the Python is just amazing. Like every single person who held the bow and shot the bow is blown away by how good the Python is. Extremely high quality riser. I'm very impressed. So yes, I think it's very good. Euchre limbs, one of the best parts is they don't, their draw weight, the draw force curve is it's close to the linear. They don't stack very much, they don't lose much. So despite my short draw length, I'm actually pulling near the same draw weight as my win, although the bolts are fully wound in, so I need to loosen the bolts a bit. But the pass is amazing. And yeah, the Euclims are fast. You know, for the draw weight, they're pretty fast. So, very impressed by the combination. It's gonna be very good. What was that? Yes, the Shibuya BBX. That was one of the best videos I've seen. That was awesome. I mean, my two favorite jokes would be the inverted target by World Archery, so the gold on the outside and white to the inside. I love that one. It's posted every year. And the Shibuya BBX is a great. But for those that don't know, I highly recommend the Shibuya BBX. It is a fantastic sight. Nothing goes wrong with it. It's very lightweight. It fits in the pouch quite nicely. No problems of adjustment. Never misses a target. The Shibuya BBX is absolutely amazing. I'm thinking of putting one on my Unison. I'm hoping that Shibuya sponsors me and sends me a BBX. Why does archery stuff cost so much? Depends on what you're talking about, right? So, like, again, the entry level stuff, like the wooden recurves, costs around $100 or $150, which is pretty typical. And $150 isn't that much for a bow. And these things, and this is the way you keep in mind, right? These things last forever. You don't replace your bows. People only buy new bows because they want new bows. You don't have to replace your bow. For the most part, they won't break, they won't deteriorate. They're long-term investments. So $150 for a bow you might use for 15-20 years if you like archery, it's a pretty good deal. So the starting bows you might buy, the low-end bows, which just function, will be completely fine. Now, if you go to a more expensive bow, what you're spending money on are better quality materials, and it might be better woods, for example, or more woods laminated, or a better riser material like a high grade aluminium, or carbon riser, or better manufacturing, or a better manufacturing process. So, for example, cheap bows, cheap aluminium bows are cast. Cast bows aren't as strong as CNC machine bows or forged bows. So cast bows tend to have less quality control, they're less perfect, they have manufacturing flaws, and more importantly, they don't really handle hard draws very well because the risers are more prone to cracking, for example. Whereas more expensive bows have much more refinement, better quality finishes, so you have more rounded edges, which are easy on the eye, feels better. There's more design elements and balance and weight, far lower tolerance for inconsistencies, and better like internal structure for the bows. So the risers and bows won't twist or torque as much. So there's a lot more to it than just like I'm holding a riser, I'm holding a bow. There is a lot more to design. So the more expensive bows, you're paying for quality materials, more precise manufacturing, and generally more stability in the bow. Whereas the cheap bows will shoot, but they will punish inconsistencies a lot more. That's why it's so expensive. Jack, should I get mid-range carbon fail limbs like Alpha Elite or go with high-end wooden? High-end wooden is probably going to be better than mid-range carbon. So the carbon, the question coming up later is like carbon or foam. It's a preference thing. Wood tends to be a little softer, carbon tends to be faster, and also carbon tend to be a bit consistent. But high-end wood should be better than mid-range carbon. So go by price rather than by material. But it depends on what you're going for, right? If you just want a decent set of limbs, then something like the WNS Alpha Elites or Elite Alphas will be just as good as any limb. Better than your cheap wooden limbs. But the high-end limbs, are smoother. Okay, so a high-end wooden limb, which is probably going to be like it's a high-end wood core. It's going to be a lot smoother than a mid-range carbon. I'll take a look at the pictures in a moment. But thanks for showing me. I will check it right now after I finish these questions. I'll have a look at that. A few more live questions. We'll get back to our list in a moment. Frank, yes. So I reviewed your form check in number 12. Yep, excellent. So I did identify your high shoulder, and it did hurt after a round. Oh, there you go. It's a common symptom, especially when you do it a lot. As someone who used to do it a lot, like this shoulder should not hurt. All right, now I'll say this from experience. I'll share with Frank. Frank's learning from experience. You know, one round I shot, the very first arrow I actually pulled a muscle, very bad form. So the shoulder went up, and I felt something go here. I shot the whole round with an injured shoulder. That was freaking terrible. Shot my personal best actually, so I persevered. But my goodness, that was avoidable. Okay. I always have a habit of doing this, a very slight movement, but it pushes you out of alignment. That's why when I watch people shoot, and Frank was an example of this case. Yeah, the shoulder coming out will cause pain, and if this hurts during competition, then it's a sign you're not doing it right, and that's a very big warning, a red flag that you might want to check this. Could you clarify your question, Guillermo? I'm not sure what you mean by renege too much on setting brace height. Oh. Sorry, I took a head for some reason. I'm not sure why I'm so tired, but yeah. Hi, Nathan. Alright. And, alright, so Frank was following up there. So, Frank has been shooting with no problems. Good. Yeah, no, it's surprising how a few bits of advice can get you in the right direction. Nice to see that you're shooting decently again. That's really a nice, good feeling for you. That's when you make a small adjustment, but it just changes everything, and it feels really good. A lot of it is like you're doing it right, but you deviate from the ideal form, and you develop an idiosyncrasy or a form fault, and you just need something to nudge you back onto the right path. And I'm glad to hear that you are shooting more comfortably. Fantastic. Nathan, do I need to buy my own bow and arrows for an archery club? Just generally, yes. Archery clubs can provide, most clubs and ranges will have a set of archery equipment for their beginners. So if you're doing a course, then they'll typically provide bows for you. So you don't need to own a bow to start archery. You can start archery using club equipment. When joining a club, the expectation is you have your own bow. If you don't have a bow, why would you join a club? Right? So you should have one if you join a club and you want to do a sport as a hobby, as a sport. But if you just want to try archery, no, you don't need to have a bow. Guillermo, no, I've received some advice from Chaser about the recommended brace height, as well as some others. Kitsun, for example, who's in chat right now. Kitsun has been very helpful when recommending brace heights and string length, and Uka also provides information. So I've got quite a bit of data to go from. So yeah, I've been given the right numbers. I'm still experimenting, but I'm behind the scenes. I haven't published any videos about the tuning process, but I've been a bit more careful with exactly what the brace should be. I'm in a pretty good sweet spot right now, but I haven't done a lot of experimentation. A lot of tuning for brace height and tiller is really about like kind of trial and error. My tiller is pretty good right now. It's a right positive tiller. And the brace height's around like just over 8.5 inches. So it's in the sweet spot, not exactly there, but it's pretty close to it. So I've done a lot. I'm not sure what I mean by reneged. I haven't gone back on the numbers. I've actually been quite close to it. So not sure what you mean by going back to the numbers, but I've been quite good on that this time around. All right, back to our prepared questions. All right. That was Raphael's. But we did the sights before. Raphael. He did make a question, but 7 to 8 meters is too close for using a sight. But no, sights you can shoot from any distance. You don't really need a sight for 7 to 8 meters, but there's nothing bad about using a sight. If that's the style you shoot, sights are fine. Aligning everything from anchor point, the dot is barely visible from a dominant eye. It's an alignment thing. So if you're changing your alignment to suit the sight, then that's why you're causing problems to yourself there. Tips on hot weather shooting: hydrate, stay hydrated. Apart from that, I don't really have a general recommendation for specifically hot weather shooting. There's no real shortcut or pro tip which I can really give you that can make you shoot better hot weather. Understand though that you do have to pay attention to things like air temperature, cool changes, cold fronts, humidity. All these things will affect the arrow. In fact, one of the things which can make it hard for a shooter is fluctuations in temperature. So if you go from cold to hot, the change in air temperature hot air rises, right? So you're shooting a long distance, then you might find your arrows will drift higher or lower depending on air temperature. So if you sight for like a cold morning, but then it warms up by midday, then the sights would not be quite right. So just to be mindful. I don't really have. Just make sure. Like I said, I don't have any advice for hot weather specifically, but just make sure that that you sight for the conditions you shoot on the day, and understand that the conditions may change during the day, and not just in wind, but also in things like air temperature. So just to be mindful that don't blindly follow your previous sight marks, because every time you shoot in every condition and different locations, it will be slightly different. That's why things like in World Cups and World Championships, you see a knockout round, yes, but the archers are actually practicing and warming up in a different range that's nearby. So they're not doing a cold start, and everything's magically sighted in. They will shoot both their bows, the spare bow and the main bow. They'll sight them in for that particular location, and then they'll move to the main range when it's their turn to shoot their round, and then they'll shoot. That's why commentators will point out that the top athletes who are in the team events and the individual events have an advantage, because in the team event they know the conditions in that particular lane, in that particular range. So when they come back, they should have a slight advantage because they've just shot there like 20 minutes ago. Whereas a person who hasn't been in a team event coming in and shoot individual will have to kind of figure out like if there's any difference between the practice range and the real range. So keep that in mind. Yeah, but in terms of shooting, there's not much specific advice. In terms of like everything else, like stay hydrated. Yeah, I've got around like 218 millimeter. I'm thinking more like about 220 right now. I've had a few extra twists. That seems to work fine, by the way. Like 218 millimeters, which is just over 8.5 inches. It's actually looking pretty good. Not sure what the brace height is for my ones, because mine aren't the Upro lights or X Pros, but I'm pretty close to it. Like, I mean, again, once I show the video, like the sound is just right. I feel like it's just the right spot for that one. The numbers, yeah, I don't tend to throw numbers for brace heights and tillers for most of my reviews, because it varies between people. I just shoot a bow. I don't care too much about brace heights and tillers. Losing it, for brace height, it can be a pretty big difference depending on your bow. So losing a few turns will change the brace height. That will change the amount of energy in the arrow, in the shot, right? Because brace height determines the power stroke. A shorter brace height generally means a longer power stroke at the cost of having to pull more. Whereas a larger brace height means there's a shorter power stroke, which means less acceleration of the arrow. And because you're working with pretty fine tolerances, the limbs will perform differently if a few millimeters or in half an inch of difference. So this will be very noticeable for barebow. Barebow shooters are very specific in their brace height because they need it for sighting, and the arrow will fly differently because they know it will. A lot of archers actually don't care that much because, again, good bows are so consistent that a few millimeters off won't make that much of a difference. And in many ways, your individual inconsistency as a shooter will affect that more than the brace height. So some people never care about the brace height, but it does matter to some extent. Sorry, I missed a question from Nathan here. Arm guards, no, you don't need them. Again, the clubs will provide these things for you if you don't have them. If you are getting your own gear, you don't need them, but you should have them. Is it worth measuring with a bow square every session? Yeah, like I said before, depends on how much you care. It's generally a good thing because you don't want things to change between shots and setups. So if you tune your bow and sight it in and you shoot really well, you should record everything you have on that bow. The brace height, the tiller adjustment and stuff, because you won't remember, right? So if you string in again, what you might find is you might come back the next day or the next week, and despite having good form, your shots don't feel right, they don't land the same spot, and you're wondering, well, what changed? Maybe your brace height. So it just removes a variable. But again, so I've come across some people, like some top archers don't care about brace height. They just string it, they know it's roughly right, so let's go from there. So most people don't care that much, but a lot of people do. The Goku shirt. I did the Tide Pod string, which is the Goku string, but yeah, I didn't use the Goku shirt. Maybe I should. Nathan. So back to your question about not spending on equipment. The gear at an archery club is really only meant for beginners. So for example, our club gear is meant for people who haven't done archery before. So we can provide you, our typical club can provide you with gear to get you started, to teach you archery. But the longer you go without buying your own gear, the less you learn. Because you really need to get equipment that is personalized for you. Your own bow, which you can tune and calibrate as you need to, your own draw weight, which you want to shoot, because most club bows are very light, and your own arrows, which are chosen specifically for you. People who buy their own gear sooner will experience faster learning. If you choose to hold off on buying your own gear, you will reach a point where you've learned everything you can, and you can't learn any more with club gear because it's not your stuff. And that means every week you might get different gear, different arrows, different bow. It's not consistent for you. It's like at some point, like it's like driving, right? So you can learn to drive in any car, but at some point you want to buy your own car because you want to like get used to driving your own vehicles. Every car handles differently, and sometimes you might for people doing a driver's test, you might be practicing on one car and do a test in another car, and it freaks you out because you can't do it. It just feels wrong. Then the turn circle's different, the engine feels different. So you should own a bow. Rocket Fist is exactly right. Now, you will see a huge spike in your performance, like in your learning, not your performance, but in your learning, because your gear is set up for you. Okay, remember, we give you cheap gear because it's cheap. It's meant to be broken in by beginners. Whereas when you get your own equipment, you will excel very quickly. So I would generally recommend, again, you can spend a month or two at an archery club using beginner gear. But I would not hold off to your first competition to buy your equipment. Now, buy your equipment sooner, so you have gear you can bring to competition. Because you can't just buy like a bow a month before a competition and then start shooting well. It takes time to adjust to it, to calibrate it, to tune it. What I'm doing now with the Chaser Python as the project is I'm showing you how long it takes to get it tuned well. I mean, a professional can get it tuned within like a few hours, but sometimes you want to experiment and go through trial and error just to get the bow just right. So, I mean, today, for example, I was shooting a Python with my other arrows. One, because I want to shoot it, but two is I want to know what I need to change or get right. And people will spend a lot of money on arrows and accessories to get it just right. And you only do that if you own your own bow. So if you want to improve in archery, you need your own gear. If you want to learn archery, you don't. That's the final comment on that. Alright, so I'm getting a little tired. I'm so sleepy today, but I haven't got through the questions yet. So I might skip through a few other things here. That was the hot weather question. Jim, dominant eye question. Yeah, this is the dominant eye versus dominant hand thing. Dominant eye. Let me explain this very quickly. The question is like, why is it important to shoot with dominant eye? Dominant eye is important because your brain will naturally show one image. Okay, so like that's why dominant eye exists. When you block one eye, like what you normally see with two eyes is actually a one eye projector. So I'm right eye dominant. If I cover my left eye, I actually see the exact same thing as with both eyes open. If I cover my right eye, I actually see a different image. Okay, so what happens is when you are focusing on a target and you're shooting with a bow and arrow, what will happen is that your dominant eye will take over. The consequence of shooting with your non-dominant eye is you'll see the arrow pointing in the wrong direction because of this variation between your eyes. Okay, so let's grab. I threw my arrow away. Sorry, let me get the arrow back. Ouch, ouch. Oh, I'm so sore. Did a lot of shooting with the bows today. Oh, I'm actually really physically tired. Oh wow, need some rest. All right. So point being is, okay. So remember eyes. All right. So obviously you're not lining the arrow up with the eye, but if imagine that you were close to your anchor point. Now right eye dominant means that I'll be sighting along the arrow basically. But if I was shooting with my non-dominant eye, if I was left eye dominant, if I position it here, and you can try it yourself, right? Imagine that close your dominant eye, and you'll see the arrow is pointing in the wrong direction. So if you're left eye dominant like me, I'm going to naturally align this way. And you realize what I've done, right? I've aimed off center. So if I close my non-dominant eye, I've realized, oh wait, I'm going off to the right, which is your left in this case, right? So my dominant eye tells me to go here. So that's center of target, right? Again, we'll demonstrate. Center of target with my dominant eye. I close my non-dominant eye to check, there. Right and center. You can see in the camera pointing there. If I close my dominant eye, and I try to center the shaft, that's where I'll be. Which is pretty close to what I said before, right? It's pretty on camera, but point being is that it's gonna change the way you see the target. Now, this is at what 10 millimeters. Imagine at 10 meters or 70 meters. This parallax is going to affect you a lot, immensely. That's why it's important to pay attention to which eye you use as your dominant eye. So that's why we put a lot of effort in. It is not just a 1% thing. It will fundamentally affect what you see. When we get beginners who shoot at the range, we normally give them the bows based on their hand because it's easier, because a lot of people don't know what the eye dominance is, so just give it your right hand, have a right-handed bow. But people who are very strongly dominant one or the other, they actually can't unsee the target. And they will do things like they'll draw the arrow to the opposite side of the face because you naturally want to align the arrow with your dominant eye. So if you're right hand dominant, you'll naturally go like that. Whereas if I'm left eye dominant but right-handed, you see a lot of beginners will do this. They'll draw it to the opposite side of the face because this eye is stronger. So they're going like that. Again, and I just close one eye. You can imagine you can't see on this side because it's a non-dominant eye. So you go like that. So people will ingrain different habits to make the shot work. Nathan has a good point here. So the example which Nathan just explained is, in this case, giving someone the wrong bow with the wrong eye dominance. At 20 meters, they missed every single shot. That's what will happen if you ignore dominant eye, and the shooter and the instructor just might not realize it. They will try to center, but their eyes are telling them it's wrong, so they go off center and they'll miss. So that's the whole point there. So yes, by the way, Jin, if you are shooting cross dominant, one thing you can do is to use a blinder. So for those that are blind, it's where you cover one eye. So you don't want to close one eye because it adds strain to your face. So your face must become fatigued and it's inconsistent. So people use a blinder for that sort of thing. I'm not sure what the question was actually, but that's the first part of the question. So the dominant eye isn't, it's part of it is to look at the correct double image. That's part of it, yes. But that's a pretty big part of archery. If you're seeing double and you're looking at the wrong target, then that's gonna cause problems, like missing completely. So yeah, that's a pretty big deal. It's not a small thing. It's a very big thing. It's why it used to be that it's still inconsistent. Some people will still make decisions based on on hand or eye dominance. Depends on the person, but a big part is make the right eye. Most people shoot with two eyes. Very few people shoot with one eye. People with one eye shooting either are shooting cross dominant, or they haven't been taught, so they're doing one eye naturally. Again, big part is two eyes is stronger. We are binocular creatures. It's easy for us. It's easy for us to gauge depth with two eyes. Okay, so we can spot the target. We can visualize distance and depth with two eyes much better than one. Nearly all archers will shoot with two eyes open. All right. Quick question from Paul. I've got a few bows from Paul, by the way. This is Bootsy. I've got a few bows from him to review the Core Air or the Galaxy Crescent, which is the same bow. So thanks to Paul for lending me a few things. But the question he has, a beauty contest between the AL1 and its replacement, the ATF. Which is better? Okay, fun question. Let's do this. Let's show both, okay? So we have the Win and Win ATF. WTF, whoops. ATF. And we have the... I have an answer already. But we'll look at both just to see. Okay. So, let's have a look at these bows. So that's the AL1. Let's grab this one, which I've shot in person. I haven't shot the ATF before. So, in my opinion, which one looks better in silhouette? Let's use the Lancaster one. Oh, that's close enough, right? They're very similar. So what you have with the ATF is you have... Oh, this is a nice pattern, actually. It's like an Adidas logo. So that's actually a pretty clean silhouette from the side. Whereas the AL1 is more of a honeycomb. So I'm looking at side on. That's look at this side on. So this is less. This is more of a natural honeycomb, or like a imagine like the veins or something, like a plant or cell, right? So this is more of an irregular structure, whereas the ATF has a much more consistent structure. Okay, so my guess, Paul, I'm guessing your feeling would be that in terms of silhouette, the ATF has the slight edge. It just looks neater side on, but you don't normally see the boat side on, which means that my vote for beauty goes to the AL1 because the two-tone look is awesome. The black and I've seen all black, which is okay. But the black and gold looks great because when you hold it, you see the black gloss, but then in between the ruts, you see the gold. That is awesome. So I prefer. Oh, hey, look at this guy! Hey, look at this guy holding it. That's the black one. So all black, I'm not as impressed. I think I prefer the ATF's silhouette more than the AL1 in terms of one color. But the dual color, the gold inside, if you can get this one, I like this better for the gold. I would get this one. That's my that is my answer there. Okay, how are we going to chat? Do you have any tips on time management? Depends how much I'm going to commit to archery, right? As if any hobby, sport, interest, pursuit, you choose how much time you want to spend. Archery is one of those sports that actually requires you to commit regularly. You can't do archery once a week. You can, but don't expect to become better with just once a week. Archery needs to be something you train in regularly, 2-3 times a week. And when you're not shooting at a range or club, you should be training, exercising every other day. If you're going to be a serious archer, at least 1 hour practice a day, either training exercises or actual shooting. A proper shoot will about take 2, 3, 4 hours. Archery takes time. It's like people who play golf, for example. They want to play golf. So they go to the driving range, hit a few balls, and that's it. But that's not golf. If you want to play a whole round of golf, you need a whole day for this. And if you can't manage this in your schedule because you work or you study or you have other hobbies, then it's going to be very difficult to commit to archery. A lot of people start archery and they drop out because they buy the gear and they realize they don't have time to commit to archery. So they spent money on stuff they can't use. So as much as I want to encourage people to do archery, I also don't want to encourage people to buy equipment, join a club, and find out that, oh, I can only make it once every month. You might as well not do archery. Do it as a fun thing. You might want to buy a cheap bow for fun, but if you can't commit more than 2 days, or 2 afternoons or 2 evenings to archery, then I would kind of question why you would do archery. It's same sort of thing for things like martial arts, for example, or dance or music, anything really. Like if for example, if you want to learn music, if you want to learn like an instrument like drums, or you want to learn piano, for example, if you can't commit to more than one lesson a week, your rate of progress is so slow, it's practically stagnant. You're basically just relearning the same thing over and over again because your skill deteriorates, so you never actually make any headway. And the further you go in archery, the more your skill will decay. So it's highly recommended you understand how much time you need to commit to maintain and grow in archery. As if anything else, if I only spend like 1 day a week practicing martial arts, I'll learn things, but I'll never become good. Not with just once a week. Never. Alright, compared to someone who trains 3 or 4 nights a week, I'm not going to be anywhere near them. They will learn new techniques and perfect old ones, while I'm just relearning old techniques. So that's the difference between someone who can commit and someone who doesn't. Alright, back to our questions. We're taking a long time this one here, but it's okay. It's going to be a little sleepy, but we'll see how we go. And the last one from Facebook is, have no video on limb alignment? No, I haven't. I will be doing some very shortly for the Python, but I'll talk about limb alignment at a different time. I did recommend the video from Chris Hill Archery. He has a much better video on tuning than I do. On to our YouTube questions. We've got quite a few here. Hey, there we go. Where does the arrow, where do all the missing arrows go? they are they are used as sacrifices to the archery monster. Every range has a monster under the ground which takes your arrow, and if you don't feed the archery range monster enough arrows, it will start taking human lives. So you must make sure you sacrifice your arrows to your range monster. I've answered the question for Abdul already, so fiberglass arrows are okay for a 25-pound PVC bow, and if that's all you're doing, nothing wrong with fiberglass. We generally don't recommend this for actual bows, but if you're just doing backhand shooting, it doesn't really matter what you do, really. Just as a question is, so there are a lot of repeat questions. So will I consider making an FAQ page that I can link to every video? The answer is not so much. Okay, here's the thing, right? When you make a list of frequently asked questions, people don't read them, right? Go to any fact page, people ignore the facts. So it's not gonna. I mean, as much as it might make life convenient for me and for you guys as viewers, I as a teacher, I understand this. People want to ask. I mean, if a lot of people, they want a quick resource, they can reference this stuff themselves. But sometimes you just want to ask somebody. I've made over 100 archery videos, and a lot of the questions which I address are either repeat questions, or I've answered them in a video. But sometimes people just want to ask because they can. So it's a good idea. The thing is, there are so many questions, I can't compile all of them to one place. The questions have so many personal variations, and in the end, people just want to validate themselves by asking the question. Because you're like, even for me, like I teach at a club, and you expect that by now a lot of people have seen my videos, they've seen the basics, but they still ask questions, and I encourage that. So as a teacher, I'm not going to look down on people who ask me questions I've already answered. A lot of people lose patience, customer service style. But as a teacher, inherently, my job is to teach the same thing repetitively to different people each time. So I probably understand that as people might want a frequently asked question list, and I of course get very similar questions. These are questions I would just always answer. And I think I know a sign of a good teacher is anyone who takes that extra step to make sure every person asks every question has that personalization, that the question you ask is answered for you, even though the question is, I might have heard the question 10,000 times from 10,000 different people. I'll still answer your question. So it's not my promise, not my commitment, but I'm not going to brush off on it. So I just read the fact. I think that's a trap on both the reader and the writer. Is FAQs or facts are like, there shouldn't be shortcuts. They're resources, they're resource lists, references, but it doesn't replace talking to a person. And in fact, a lot of people will make wrong decisions based on misreading the fact, for example. This is actually where I have a bit of a gripe with the subreddit, because the thing with the subreddit is that like nobody maintains it. Like people, it was a placeholder. There's a bit of arrogance on the subreddit because if you read the wiki on the subreddit, or you read the FAQ on the wiki on the subreddit, it's elitist and it stinks of it. And like I don't want to bother wasting my time, working for elitists. People who are compound centric, egotists, or trad shooters for complex. It's not the right place to ask questions. And part of my work on YouTube is to provide a resource where people don't have to deal with elitism. Now, I'm not saying that subreddit is bad, but it's not exactly a good, reliable resource for most people, actually. So yeah, that's I don't like FAQs. FAQs can answer very quick, simple questions. There are things like, what bow length should I use, or what happens if I use a wrong length? Nothing will happen. People will keep on asking. It's okay to keep on asking. As repetitive as it is for you and me, that's the exchange of archery. Probably have frequent things, right? Don't ignore people to sort of thing here. I don't do topics for Q&As, Carson. Like the topics are I answer questions which are asked of me. I don't have a topic. This isn't the right thing for topics. Topics are for my reflection videos. Those are my topical ones, but not for my Q&A. The Q&As are just live questions. Anything else on the live chat there? Back to our YouTube questions. But yeah, the point is, like, I could save a lot of effort if I didn't really answer questions true, but that's what we do as teachers, right? We just take the same questions over and over. So, yeah, I actually question whether FAQ would be effective. And, I mean, the other downside of FAQ is that there are hundreds of questions which are constantly asked, not a few dozen. The FAQ would be so large, people won't read it. So that's the other downside. Alright. I've answered this question from Josie already. Difference between foam and wood core. Fiber and carbon fiber. I can't objectively explain the differences. Some people say wood's smoother and carbon's a little faster. But the materials, I can't generalize. You know, I can't say wood or foam is better. What it is they'll feel different in terms of how smooth they are. But you also have to factor in the price and the manufacturing and quality. So, yeah, the main difference is how smooth they are. And also how much they vibrate or don't vibrate, as well as how consistent they are. So if you have a slight variation in your form, then cheaper limbs will punish you more than more expensive limbs. Math, is a ballista a really big bow? No, it's not. One of the videos I'll do upcoming is crossbows and bows. People say, oh, a crossbow is a bow sideways. No, it's not. Mechanically, a crossbow is not a bow. A bow is a stick and a string pulled by fingers. A crossbow, it has a cocking and trigger mechanism. So that's why a crossbow user is not an archer. In fact, in modern archery, we call them an arbalist. So a person who uses a crossbow uses a different skill set, using a different mechanical device to shoot a projectile. So a crossbow is not a bow. So a ballista is not drawn by the fingers, is not pulled. A ballista isn't pulled back and then let go. It is locked and cocked. So if a ballista, it's basically a giant crossbow, not a bow. That's basically what it is. All right, next question. Shanghai Jin, I can't remember her drawing. It was mentioned at some point. I'm not sure what it is. Let's check World Archery. World Archery, there you go. Let's actually check, because often the profiles will say so. I'm sure you've checked Paul, by the way, but hey, Lee's such a good shooter. Oh, the Koreans were hammered in the last World Cup. I mean, they were like silver medalists, which is awesome. But to see like Chinese Taipei defeat Korean all the team events, that was quite a show. Let's look at our athletes, and I'm sure Shanghai Jin will pop up very early on, because she's a very good shooter. So, 40 pound, right-handed, 27.8 inch arrows. So I imagine it's about 26 inch draw length. So she is quite a short person, which is that's about my size, or even she's actually taller than me, I think. And 40 pound. Okay, so it's not a very high draw weight for competitive shooting, compared to like men like 50 pound or something. So 48 pounds, not sure if that's on the fingers. I doubt it is, might be 40 pound limbs. But even at this length, it's gonna be around, you know, if this is the limbs, then that'll be like a 38 you know, pounds on the fingers. If it's actual, then it might be like 42 pound limbs or something. So this is pretty close to what I shoot. So at 70 meters, just hitting like, you know, like a 90, like 5% of a shots in the gold and 10 ring. That's fine. So that's what I think a draw would be. Actually says so on World Archery. Next one. Aubrey. I just restarted the archery and I got a bow. I'm looking at Hand of Ease, a 40-pound draw with 56-inch bow, 40-pound draw, and it left me 27 inches. I can draw it, but I know there are some faults in my techniques that I haven't done it in about 5 years, and I can only draw it for about 20 seconds before having to let it down. Do you mind going into some detail about the drawing correct techniques? Don't hurt myself. Big one here. Yeah. All right. So Aubrey has a classic case of the bow's too heavy. So what tips can I provide to draw it correctly? Bow's too heavy for you. I will say what basically every coach instructor will say: your bow's too heavy for you. If you can't hold for full draw for more than 30 seconds, the bow's too heavy, and you're going to exhaust yourself trying to do it properly. I don't have any tips on correct technique other than using correct technique. But if your correct technique is still not enough to hold the bow for an extended amount of time, you need to either use a lighter bow or improve your strength conditioning to use the bow. There is no shortcut to increasing your strength to use a heavier bow. So follow all the fundamentals. Make sure you have the right shoulder alignment. Make sure you're using your back muscles where you can. So not using your arms, not using your shoulders, but using getting the line right, getting it right into your back and feeling it through your back, and basically getting that really strong tension in your back. That's the key. But if you're doing that, if you can't do that with a 40-pound bow, then you will have to make a change. Either light a bow or do extensive training to regain your strength. That's my recommendation. Maybe give them more detail if you want, but like I said, if you physically aren't able to use the bow, then you can't apply good technique. You must be able to apply good technique to use the bow at its draw weight. If you can't use the bow, either, like I said, lower draw weight or increase your personal strength. Often it's easier to go and get a lighter bow, but in the case where you can't buy one, then the only thing you can do is to condition yourself to use the bow. But always maintain good form. Don't let strength or draw weight dictate your form. Whatever you're capable of using, you pick the draw weight for that bow. Again, I mentioned earlier in the stream that there's a new shooter at our range who, it's his first day, he already ordered a 50-pound bow. And for any instructor, this would be a huge mistake. But I didn't judge him. I did personally, but I didn't say so, so I wanted to encourage him. But he's the sort of person who I know would not shoot a 50-pound bow properly. And he has a look in his eyes where if he was not taught and guided in the right direction, he would hurt himself. And that's what I'm worried about. In this case for Aubrey, I can't judge you because I don't know you, but I just see so many people commit to buying a bow they can't use. And it's such a huge mistake, such a bad mistake. And as much as I don't want to say you've made a mistake, just understand those are your options. Either lighter draw weight or increase your conditioning. Doing gym work or doing archery specific exercises, SPTs. You need to increase your conditioning to use your heavier bow. There's no shortcut to using a bow if you don't have the physical strength to do it. That's why we always give people 20-pound bows or 15-pound bows to start with, because if you can't pull the bow back, then you've got problems. But yeah, a good note to keep in mind is that bows should feel like toys, right? So if you can barely control the bow for 20 seconds, then it's more than likely then you've got a very high draw weight. So yeah, I can't go more than that just because the solutions are pretty clear. Light draw weight or more strength, whatever's easy for you, and it's most likely draw weight, but you may have to spend more time training your muscles up. Otherwise, there's no unless I see you shoot, I can't judge on your method. So all I can say is conditioning or lighter draw weight. Next one, what bow riser is the best bow riser? Chaser Python. I don't know. I have no recommendation for a riser. Everyone's so different. Every riser is so different. Depends on what you like. It's like saying, what's the best car? What's the best motorcycle? No, I can't name one. There are a lot of good ones. There's no one best one. If you're an average to small person, I feel you can buy a 62-inch Sam Sage and just get shooting. What if you're over 6 foot and you need a long bow? Yeah, true. Okay, so if you're using a field style bow, a lot of bows can be used, but if you are a giant, you should get a longer bow. Cheap recurve recommendations for people with long draws, basically anything over 70 inches would be good. Nice starting point, I recommend the Mandarin ducks if you're getting a cheap bow. Alright, so the stage comes in a short length. One thing you might look at, let's see if we can get this. I'm not sure what weight you want, by the way, because some of the long bows might not come the right weight. But if you want an affordable bow, like a Samick Sage price range with a long draw length, Mandarin Duck would be really good. Let's have a look. They've changed the website a bit here. Where is their product page? Mandarin Duck. Yeah, I'm looking here, right? Mandarin Duck. Where's the bow page? It's new arrivals. Where's the bows? There used to be a very obvious bow question. Bow link. There's main. Speaking of bad websites, Chaser, get your website together. Oh, here we go. That's over here. Yeah, Chaser. I'll mention Chaser later. So what I might recommend, possibly, would be the Windrunner. 6 to 8 inches, which is quite a good length. If you've got it's not 72 inches, but it's a nice cheap bow. Unfortunately, max draw is 32 pound. Okay, so if you're going for higher lengths, but if you've got a long draw length, it'd be like nearly like 35 pound. So this is an option. Is a 6 to 8 inch bow. There's quite a few of these bows are reasonable price. So if you want a cheap bow for your draw length, then this might be an option for you. It's left-handed. You want cheap recurves. Even things like the Optimos or the Samick Polaris are decent choices, and they can come in longer lengths. Let's have a quick look here. So we've got the WS Optimo or the S Optimo Plus. They do come in long lengths. Let's try to find out which shop has one. Yeah, the Optimo Plus, you can get in long draw lengths, and possibly the Polaris is a good choice too. Even or the Polaris for those Americans who can bag my accent. Samick Polaris. Let's have a look here. What is the length on this one? Lancaster, 66 inch. There's probably more versions of this. Just trying to think here. So that's a 66 inch version. I'm pretty sure there's a longer version than this. If I just type in Polaris. I want the bow actually. So you've got the bow. They should bring up. There's the rise of the bow, 62. There's 68. I know that for sure because we have some. That might be actually it. Okay. What does Three Rivers have? Let's have some fun with some bow. We're doing some bow shopping here, right? What do we have? What kind of bows can I recommend here from Three Rivers? Ooh, medieval. Ooh, that's a new category. Where did that come from? Really? Oh, it's in this one. It's fine. Let's have a look here. Bow. Let's go. That's a that is a pretty expensive bow. If it's like that price range. Let's go down to is this broken? Yeah, I think that's slide. There you go. That was like logarithmic. Alright, that was weird. You saw it live, people. Let's say 300. I'd say they're 300, 270 US dollars. So if we go from there, and we want just bows. Not strings, just bows. Let's look here. Alright. Quick look. I mean, a lot of these bows can be used with a long draw length. I imagine you want some kind of longbow recurve. The longbows are nice too. Yeah, that's a longbow. It's not too bad. They want a recurve bow. I mean, basically any like 68 inch bow, whether it's recurve or longbow, will be fine for you. Those are quite fancy. What is that? Ooh. Is that a shoot-through riser? It is! Whoa, it's a center shot. What the? Okay, well it's a junior bow. It's $35. It's a junior ambidextrous shoot-through riser. Okay, so this is not the question you were asking, but that's an interesting design. People always ask, like, can you like get one of these like shoot-through risers? David Novak, if you're watching this, look at this. I'm gonna text you later. This might be an option for you. I don't think I would personally like this because it will play havoc with your sight picture. Because the shoot-through design means you can't see the target properly. But if you want something for young archers or disabled archers, sighting the target isn't the most important thing. That's actually a really interesting design. I want to review this. I would like to review this. That's actually a really interesting thing. Carbon Express Universal. I need to get one of these. Sorry, I got completely sidetracked there. Yeah, look, any bow which is like 68 inches or above will be okay for you. So I don't have a specific recommendation, but yeah, 62-inch Samix Sage might be uncomfortable for a very tall person, but I do recommend a longer bow in that case. Whoa. Yeah, that was interesting. So I'll finish the YouTube questions on the live chat because we are getting a little late. Let's see. That's the Samix Sage question. Hi, the wife wants to try a takedown rear curve, but the Samix Sage is too big for her hands. Do you think the Southwest Spider would be a good way to try? The answer is yes. Yes, that's exactly what I actually said in my review. The grip on the Samix Spider is smaller than that of the Sage. So if the Samix Sage is slightly too big, the Spider would be just right. So I agree with this. That would be a good choice. Kate, I want to start archery, but the beginner's course with the coach starts in a month. Right now, they offer a place to shoot without any coaching. Should I wait for coaching? Okay, if you've never done archery before, I would recommend you do not shoot by yourself. You should get some instruction. Okay, if you know how to use a bow, if you've been taught the basics, then you can shoot freely by yourself. But there's no point in going to a range and shooting if you don't know what you are doing. Archery is not that intuitive. A lot of people say, oh, archery is pretty easy, you can be intuitive. Yes, you can be intuitive if you have the knowledge of the fundamentals. Most people, the average person, can't pick up a bow and figure out how to use it. Trust me, I teach people, both adults and kids. If you give a bow to somebody, they will not hold it correctly. They'll hold it upside down. They'll hold the arrow incorrectly. It's a mess, and you're likely to injure yourself or injure somebody else. So you need some guide. You need somebody to show you how to use the bow. Doesn't matter if you're shooting well or not, but you need somebody to show you safety and how to use the bow. If you can do that, then sure, do it. But if you have no idea how to do archery and there's no one who can show you, then I would recommend waiting. Safety precautions for shooting your backyard. I've made a video on this already, guys. So check the backyard shooting video. Main thing is make sure the arrow will not leave your area. So if you're shooting in your backyard, make sure there is a 0% chance of the arrow leaving your backyard, either going over the fence or through the fence or through your garage. Make sure the arrow cannot leave your designated area. That means do not take risky shots. Do not do anything where there is a slight chance the arrow may not hit the target. If you have a small target, make sure you shoot from a very close distance where you can comfortably hit it 100% of the time. Or you have a backstop that can stop the arrow from deflecting or going somewhere else. That's the main precaution. I did a much bigger video on this, but just bear in mind, you don't want to have arrows going off away. The next question is an interesting one. World Archery. Let me try and get this here. So the question coming up is you can find the London 2012 elimination heats, but you can't find the Rio matches and finals. You will probably find them in the World Archery website, Rio 2016, because there are two channels here. There's the Olympic channel, and there's the there's a World Archery channel. I'm not sure which one is which here. 2016 Olympics. So this is not the latter World Cup. Do they have an Olympic playlist? I might have to check the playlist instead. So I'm not sure exactly what it was. 2016. That's 2016. Because the Olympics happened halfway through here. You may have a point here, by the way. The Road to Rio 2016. Here we go. They've got a playlist here. Is there videos? Yes. Oh, no. Okay. So, World Archery didn't broadcast Olympic Games. You're right. It is quite hard. That's actually interesting. Let's do a quick search. So we have the Olympic channel, and that's it. Hey, no. No, you're right. If you're doing an Olympic search, London has been recorded and uploaded to the Olympic channel. Rio was not. Absolutely right. So yeah, no. Apart from this footage, I don't think there's anything else, because World Archery normally records and broadcasts their own events. The Olympic Games is not broadcast by World Archery. It's broadcast by, well, the Olympic Committee and whatever company does that. But no, you're absolutely right. You're not going to find footage outside of what you have here. So I can't really help you on that one. London has the entire stream, by the way. So you have all the quarterfinals and semis and so on. So it's a whole stream. But yeah, the 2016 Games was notably not covered. And you won't find many videos on that. Not sure about this one here. I've covered the question from Boots already. Do I do Olympic archery? I do Olympic style. Yes, I do. Do I go to competitions? Yes, I do compete. Though I don't. I have some videos of me in competition, but not recent ones. I haven't done competition for quite a while. Hey, it's Gitson. I don't have any comment on the materials for these strings, so I can't really say much about that. The coolest arrow you've shot? I've had this question before. I will pass this because when you do Olympic archery, there's no cool shots. You just either hit the target or you don't. I don't do trick shots, whatever you want. Best site for $80. The best site. Best site for budget. $80. There's no good site for $80. They're all the same, really. They're all like the plastic sites, like the cartel sites. They're good for beginners, but there's no good sites. So yeah, cartel was what I'll probably go to. Otherwise, not much bothering about. Why isn't barebow? A very good question from Ali. Why isn't barebow instinctive as competitive? Is it distance? Not necessarily. Okay, this is controversial, but I'll just smash this one out. Okay, so the problem with barebow is that it has a low skill ceiling. Okay, competition relies on many people being good or being close to each other. A competitive match is when people are equally matched. All right. So the most competitive form of archery is compound. It makes it weird because, hang on, compound's too easy. You know, the point is, because people can become so accurate with compound, competition is much higher. Recurve to a lesser extent because there's a much wider skill gap. So with compound, if you have, say, 50 compound shooters, there's like 5 points between first place and 20th place. So it's super competitive. And it's also quite easy to get into as well. So a lot of people, a compound has, I guess, the skill ceiling is actually lower, I guess, because like a good shooter will reach a maximum score quite in a short period of time. So compound is hard competitive because the very top are just jostling for 1 point or 1x. Recurve is competitive because you have like between first and 20th might be like 15 points. Barebow, first and 20th might be like 100 points apart. So you have people who are very good at barebow and people who are average. You don't usually see barebow shooters directly compete very tightly. There's usually a very big gap in skill. But the bigger point is that the skill ceiling is that you can't... Barebow is a limiting factor. People think it's the other way around where recurve or compound limits you. No, barebow limits you because there is only so much you can do to control all the variables of the shot. So by the time you reach 50 meters, you can't reliably pinpoint exactly where the arrow will go. You can only get within a certain grouping. Because with enough practice, you will get a certain grouping. You can't exceed that. Recurve will tighten that because there is much more precision in your process and more precision in your reference points. Compound, even more so. So barebow will naturally have a much wider grouping. And the reason why you don't see barebow as a focus for competition is because when the equipment and the technique and the rule set don't permit you to become any more accurate than this, that's not competitive enough. Again, look at the old, the former world championships when you have people shooting longbows and barebow recurves, and they're shooting at 70 meters. Their grouping is like that wide, right? You have like they're basically spraying the target at 70 meters, a standard which the average archer today can do. A good archer will go from this to this, and competition would mean that the person who can do this consistently should be the better archer, not the person who missed a few arrows. So that's the reason why recurve or freestyle recurve is the it is. What's the problem, by the way? What's the problem? Sorry, I'm just checking chat there. Was I talking to myself? Did I punch something by accident? I wasn't following chat there. What was wrong? I'm just like answering questions. I'm ignoring chat, by the way. Did I say something? There's storms here, by the way. Oh, did it? Yeah, no, I can't monitor the thing. Okay. Nothing popped up on my screen, so it might have been interruption. Wasn't sure. It might be YouTube, might be me. But oh yeah, it is dead. I've got nothing on my screen too. Hang on. Let me refresh it for a bit here. So I think the stream did die. What happened to? What happened? I'm still, yeah, I'm live, of course. I probably wasn't that important anyway. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Stream died for a bit. Not sure what happened there. Because I just checked the feed here, so yeah, it was missing. All right, cool. Not a problem. Yeah, no problem there. Yeah. I can't remember what the last question was. I skipped like 5 questions. It wasn't that much anyway. But yeah, talk about barebow. Yeah, like I said, with barebow, the thing with barebow is that yeah, it's very hard to like reach a level where it is actually you being precise rather than pure luck and probability. Whereas with recurve, there is more control over the shot. It's not that the bow does it for you, but it's that the archer is capable of choosing where to place the shot. Whereas with barebow, you've got a much greater variation, so a good shot isn't necessarily going to hit the target in the right place. So, where we see barebow, thanks for reminding me, where we see barebow excel, or at least be competitive, is shorter distances. So, why recurve is the primary choice is because 70 meters aggravates any technique flaws. You could have a shorter distance event, but there is less fluctuation in accuracy at shorter distance. Long distance will punish bad technique and bad execution. So a recurve shooter will be tested at 70 meters, and that is a closer competition than a barebow at 50 meters, and it's less impressive to shoot 30 meters than it is to shoot 70 meters for target competition. Now, where barebow can be competitive, and in fact is competitive, is in field and 3D. So at the last World Games, not the Olympic Games, but the last World Games, the competition for archery was field, and barebow was the main event. Not recurve, not compound, but barebow. So we finally saw some good barebow shooters. Indoor is also very popular with barebow for a good reason. It's 18 meters and 3D. So in environments where you go away from precision static shooting to more variable distances, barebow has a bit more of a market or an audience, and more people enjoy barebow for that reason. But it's a competition where, again, you watch people shoot barebow, or you shoot like barebow, like it can be very accurate up to around 30 to 40 meters to 50 meters. Beyond 50 meters, barebow method is just not accurate enough. So once you exceed that comfortable distance, it becomes less of a competition and more of a random number generator within reason. That's to answer the question. I'm not saying which one's better. What I'm saying is that's why barebow isn't competitive, because it is you can't exceed the limitations of the equipment and the techniques that you use. So an archer who is very skilled can only reach a certain score with barebow. I mean, like, it's not defined. It's not like you're saying you can only score 500 points out of 720. But you won't find anyone who's reached 600 plus or qualified for the Olympic Games with a barebow. It's just not going to happen. Whereas someone who trains with recurve can build up their skill and technique and precision to the point where they can reach that higher level. So the skill ceiling is increased. So a barebow shooter will start from the same foundation, and they'll get up there, and they'll start fizzling out in the, let's say, in terms of points, around 400 to 500 points is where they'll start fizzling out as a maximum score. Recurve can go from like 0 to like 600 plus to like 680. It's a world record right now, right? So around there. And of course, compound will exceed the 700 plus. So the skill ceiling increases. So somebody who shoots exceptionally well can demonstrate this more explicitly through score and results. Whereas someone shooting barebow, you can't prove your barebow skill because you're shooting at a distance where there are just too many variables to prove your own skill. That's my opinion, by the way. And like I said, this isn't about what's better or worse, but why recurve is the dominant competitive format. Alongside compound, it's different though, but recurve is the dominant form because it's actually the biggest test of consistency and precision. Barebow can be precise, not as precise. That's one factor, and generally not as precise over longer distances. Hence why barebow tends to be more favored, especially trad barebow, for 3D or field, which is closer distance, but in different environments. Whereas target is generally long distance. So precision equipment for a precision format compared to a more dynamic or a less static format. That's the long answer to that question there. Cool, stream is working right now. Thank you. I'd be worried if I didn't wasn't streaming here. All right, back to our questions. The most brutal type of arrow, any broadhead really, or the barbed arrows. Barbed arrows, especially in the medieval times, would be very hard. Barbed arrows are brutal, not because they can. I mean, like the old arrows, firstly, were kind of dirty and they'll cause infections quite easily. But you can't really pull them out because the barbs will cut into the flesh, and they will prevent you from removing the arrow. So the only way to get rid of the arrow is to push it through, and that will cause probably more infection than anything else. I mean, you might say broadheads, but they can bleed out. But any slicing arrow, especially with barbs, will make it very wicked. I'm just speaking generally, by the way, not saying that it's particularly like nasty, but I think it's generally speaking, the barbed arrows are probably the worst arrows. Barbed wire? What am I doing? Barbed arrows. Sorry, it's like I'm tired. It's been an hour and a half or 2 hours or something. So the barbed arrows, I mean, these kinds of arrows, I mean, this might be kind of fantasy. Let's have a quick look here. I mean, something like this would be nasty. Here, something like this would be quite nasty because you have the arrow point, which obviously goes to the target and penetrates it, but you have all these reverse barbs which snag onto the flesh, so it can't be pulled out. And these are like fishing pointer arrows. I don't know what they are. That was it. Barbed arrow. Lots of fantasy. But even like these ones, for example, that's a broadhead. These are typical broadheads. Interesting, I have legal and illegal. So I have legal fixed blades versus illegal ones. This is actually really interesting. All right, so like in terms of like hunting, from archery talk here, you can use fixed blades which are forward directed, so there's no barbs, or there's a forward pivoting blade, so there's no barbs here. Whereas you have these ones with barbs at the back here. These are dangerous. You hit something, you can't remove them, and that's unethical. It's very brutal. So these kind of arrows, yeah, you can't remove them from the target once you hit them. That's probably the most brutal kind of arrow. All right. A few more questions. Best string for limbs, no comment there. I think Kitson already answered the question there. A few different options, but I have no personal recommendation. Is there a question here? Oh, there's a lot of questions. Okay. Alright, so you're planning on most lists for Joseph. You're working from home, focusing on technique. So, what would I change from inside the Archer for a noob? Okay. If you're going to learn from a source, inside the Archer is okay, right? So, I wouldn't really change anything from inside the Archer. But also understand that the technique or the method used by Ki-Sik Lee isn't the one used worldwide. It's very popular worldwide, but it isn't the only way to shoot. So don't feel like you're constrained by inside the Archer and the KSL method. It's a good method, but at the same time, you kind of want you want a coach to work with, because it's very hard to teach KSL by yourself. Just to be wary of using inside the Archer. Good resource, but you need some to validate if you're doing it right. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Would I change anything? No. If I was working with somebody and I see them struggling with a certain method or approach, I might change them. But from a purely methodical point of view, I wouldn't change inside the Archer or the KSL method. If you read that book and you follow that, you will build a solid foundation. And this is for any kind of archery. If you have a strong foundation, you can adapt to any style. So I make no specific changes for that one. Number 2, why do you choose a 68-inch bow when I should be using 66-inch? Good question. So I've got around like a 26-inch draw length. Why do you use 66-inch bow? Couple of reasons. The main reason is my coach told me to. My coach is the old school, right? Buy a 68-inch bow. He recommends it for everybody. Unless you're really tall, in which case, buy a 70-inch bow. We don't have any 60-inch bows. Like, again, our coach says, look, you can use 68-inch, fine. And I can, in fact. I mean, if I fold the charts, I would probably be more suited for a 66-inch bow. True. But I use 68 because like the coach told me to, so I did. There are advantages. I mean, you probably find more stability. A shorter bow will have a bit more punch to it, but a longer bow is a bit more stable. And I have no problem shooting 68-inch, especially if you buy good limbs. It won't punish you as badly. I'm not like in underdrawing. I mean, a 70-inch bow is too long for me. I don't really get enough of a power stroke with a 7-inch bow. Whereas a 66-inch bow would give me a bigger power stroke, but I shoot fine with a 68-inch bow. Differences aren't that big in terms of your bow size. And other resources beside KSL, I don't have any specific resource to keep in mind. I recommend NUSensei. And the last question I can't answer. I'll watch the format actually look like. This is too vague for me to answer. I'll leave it as it is. So that's our official formal list of questions. Sorry guys, that's like 2 hours. But a lot of questions here, and a lot of good live chat questions too. These are getting bigger and longer, which I'm completely fine with. Next time I might be a bit more selective, but there we go. That's our formal questions done. Let's take live questions for a bit, and then we'll sign off, because I'm really tired for some reason. Man. Okay. Where are we? So if you want to ask questions, ask now, tag me. Could I look at your riser? I could. Yeah, sure, I guess. Yeah, I'm going back to the chat right now. Yeah, draw weight always reappears as a question. It's the most common one. It's just people, when you buy a bow, draw weight is what kind of dictates the bow. A lot of people are drawn to the number rather than the bow itself. Actually, today, one of my learners at the club, he was fixated on the idea where certain bows have set draw weights. And he didn't realize where the weight came from. He thought it was the string. Fair enough, some people think this. And he didn't realize that it was in the limbs. Not the riser, not the string, but the limbs. So he looked at one of my bows, the Stingray, and he asked, oh, you know, what weight is that? And oh, it's 35 pounds. He pointed to a win bow. What weight is that? I said, I don't know. So, and it took a while for him to process that a bow model isn't a static weight. I mean, one particular bow might be one weight, but if you buy a different draw weight for one piece bow, or you buy different limbs, you can change the draw weight. So people don't realize that weights can be changed. But that's why people say that, because they kind of choose based on weight. That's the power of a bow, but they don't realize where the weight comes from sometimes. So you will often see the draw weight question reappear quite a bit. Am I Australian? Yes, I am. Wearing the Australia shirt, so that's from Joyner. The question from Joyner, not the shirt or jacket. Yeah, there's a bit of discussion earlier about the inefficiency of bows. Yeah, a modern bow is with modern material and a modern arrow is gonna shoot an arrow much more efficiently than an ancient bow. Ancient bows had to have high draw weights because of inefficient materials. I mean, yeah, even back then, you know, a Mongolian horsebow, a composite horsebow, could throw an arrow almost as far as the English longbow. So it wasn't a matter of like high is better. And bear in mind, crossbows had very high draw weights, like 1,000-pound draw weight, because they got very short power strokes. I mean, of a bow, you can draw it back here or here if you're overdrawing, but a crossbow is about that much length. It's a very short length. I mean, you're holding it here, right? So you're using steel prods or steel limbs, and you've got a length of about that much. So what would a crossbow be like? The crossbow would be probably here. If you draw that by hand, that's hardly anything. So you have inefficient materials with a very short power stroke. So 1,000-pound crossbow isn't that strong. I mean, it's strong. It can probably pierce through armor. Plate maybe might have a bit of trouble, but definitely metal armor and gambeson. But that power stroke is very short, so you have very high weights, which need mechanical cranking, but a very short power stroke. They're kind of different here. Oh, rock humper, that's a good question there. So, why do recurve bows have this really big, thick grip, and compound bows have a very thin grip? It's actually answered by World Archery. The reason being is that with a compound bow, you actually do not want any pressure on the grip that can cause torque. So compound bows have very narrow grips, like almost no grip, because you want minimum contact. I'm going to grab an example here. So, I don't have a bow here. I have so many bows. I have no bows. I've got long bows. They don't count. Do I have any shaped grips? No, I don't. I do, sorry, yes. Aha! Spare bow lying around here. So, where was I? So, the reason why you have this grip here for recurve, or even with some American longbows, you actually want a good solid grip on the bow here, because the riser tends to be quite heavy most of the time, and you want good ergonomics. A compound bow is less ergonomic, but you sacrifice ergonomics for minimum contact, because you don't want your hand in any way to shift this. Okay, so compound bows uses, and this is a very rough explanation, you have a very narrow grip on a compound because you don't want contact. You just want the bow to touch here. That's basically it. There might be a loop pin on that. So the bow just sits there, pull it back, and that's why you have very narrow grips, because it's the absolute pinnacle of minimal grip. They don't want to, as Morton pointed out, torque the bow. So by having a minimal grip, there's less torque, there's less contact for torque. That's a basic version of that. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, Jin. The riser. I'll look at it in a moment. Yeah, Kitsim, of course. Yeah. December. You can meet up. I mean, we normally close in December as a club, so which means more chance for you to catch up. So yeah, we'll be happy to catch up. Throw me a message and email, and I will happy to have a look at you down in Melbourne. I'll meet up rather. And you can probably outshoot me pretty easily too. Okay. So the riser scratches. Let's have a look here. Oh, these aren't scratches. June, these aren't scratches. This is vein. This is just a plastic vein. These aren't scratches. So, this is basically the vein making contact with your riser. Okay, scratches are different. So, all this is all that is, it's an easy fix. All that is simply the vanes are touching the riser. And what that means is that the arrows aren't properly spined. So you need to change the spine. Your arrows are too stiff or too soft. You need to do some tuning. Get a bare shaft, do some tuning, and choose that. Is it normal? No, it's not. Well, it's normal because it happens all the time, but it means your arrows aren't the right tune. A plunger can help, but it's not the reason why it's being caused. What you have here, because the plastic flap over here, it acts as a plunger. Okay, so the whole point of this flap here is to provide some buffer for the arrow to get by. Because considering there are the contact points on the rest and the shelf is exactly where the vanes are. It just means that the arrows are not properly spined for this particular bow. So the vanes are contacting very consistently in these areas here. So these aren't scratches. You can scrape them off. Just use your fingernail and just rub them off. So these aren't scratches. These are streaks, by the way, which I'm wondering. So these are streaks caused by the plastic vanes. A plunger won't solve this. A plunger can help it, can make it easier to tune, but it won't solve this by itself. So the main problem you have is actually the arrows not being the right tune, the right spine. That's actually it. I had a very good question before, by the way. Rocket Fist has a fantastic question. Sorry, let's do Carson first. What should I look for when buying secondhand limbs? Make sure they're fine. Limbs are pretty good. Just make sure there aren't any like clear signs of damage, cracks and so on. But limbs should be pretty good. Not a huge problem finding limbs. Rocket Fist. Why do archery clubs tend to be male dominant? That's a very good thing here. Despite archery being very accessible, in general, sports is male orientated. This is in general. It's not specific to archery, but in general, and this is just widespread, more men tend to do sport. And this carries over to archery because as a sport or as a hobby, it's something which more men tend to do. Plus, it carries the vibe of a shooting sport, and hence you have a bit of masculinity involved here. It doesn't mean women can't do it, but I think the patterns in archery are in line with the sports in general. If anything, archery tends to be a bit more inclusive because it's so easy to access. But it's the sort of thing where, yeah, in general, men tend to be a bit more sport, more drawn to sport. Not saying women aren't, but it's not that the archery is more masculine. It's just the demographic of archery is the same demographic for a lot of male-dominant sports. So that's probably the reason why. Where are we? Rock Humper, the bear takedown is a beautiful bow. Do I think vintage older models are still better than new? The bow itself hasn't changed. Okay, so mechanically, the bow has the same design and function. What's changed is the wood and the color schemes. That's why you have like the limited edition one, which is a very nice dark wood. So yeah, older doesn't necessarily mean better, but it can be more expensive because it's no longer being made. So if you have an older version of the bear takedown, then you have a vintage model, which may bring a higher price, especially in good condition. It doesn't make it a better bow though. The bow's the same. Handles are exactly the same. Yeah. Okay, well, I reckon we'll end it there. I've got to shoot tomorrow. Oh man, I've got a dilemma. So I've got to shoot tomorrow. I haven't finished setting up my Python, but I want to shoot it. I just don't have the arrows for it at the moment. So, Aubrey, yes, I've answered your question. It was like 20 minutes ago. I'll do a quick summary for you. I just closed everything. Your question, Aubrey, was the draw weight one, wasn't it? Yes. So your question, my quick summary for you, Aubrey, is that there is no shortcut to telling you how to use correct technique. Now, if I can watch you shoot, then I can give you more advice on whether you're doing it efficiently or not. But fundamentally, if you can't hold the weight of the bow for more than 30 seconds, then you are likely overbowed. So your two options are either to go for a lighter draw weight or to basically go through more intensive weight training or strength or endurance training to increase your conditioning to use the bow. If you can't physically handle the bow at full draw for 20 or 30 seconds, then there's no way around it. Either lower your draw weight or increase your strength. So you could use the bow and kind of eventually gain strength through using it. But as with a lot of draw weight questions, if you need to bridge the gap between your current strength level and the bow weight, then you need to plan out how to go up in weight. So you need to have a routine where you have strength training to improve your conditioning. That's my answer for you. Like I said, there's unfortunately no shortcut where a weaker person can use a heavier bow. A weaker person isn't going to use a heavy bow well. So that's the choice you have to make. Yeah, actually, the X10s are close to what I have, except my X10s are also too long. I remember I use a sight-mounted clicker, and my sight and clicker are currently on the win bow. I could use the X10s. I barely have any, by the way, but the clicker isn't set up for those X10s either. So yeah, that would have been a good idea. In fact, I would have had a very close tune, I reckon, as it is. Yeah, it's just, I mean, I'm using lighter limbs. So, I mean, the X10s might have been close to the 40-pound end, because on my draw it's about 36. But I'm using a 33, and I plan to drop to like 32 or 31 even. So I'm going much lower than what I had before. So I could use the 36s. That's a possibility. I've never tried before, so I could try them. Just for kicks, really. So I could physically use the arrows. I have arrows too. I have the Predators. They're long, but they do fly decently. They're slightly soft at the length that I have cut. The X I haven't tried yet, but yes, you're actually right, Amazements. Good observation. I agree with you too. Could be done, but it's mostly like I don't have a clicker, so it feels weird shooting without a clicker. And plus, I haven't actually finished calibrating. I've got the sights, stabilizers, and everything on. So it's working, but it's not like shootable in the sense where I can reliably shoot well. But it's beautiful, by the way. So I might think about it. Might be the first. Might be part of my project path and documentation. It's like, let's shoot the bow without being set up and see how it works. If I shoot better than my actual bow, I'll be spewing. You know, so I'll be shooting so well. Then I win and win. Here we go. I'll shoot this like half set up path and I'll just outscore myself. Personal best. Sartak, is there any exercise before starting archery? Because the draw weight is too much. No. Use lighter bows. It's if you want to exercise, you need to do things like rows. So the exercises which train this part here. So pull-ups can help. Rows, rowing exercises can help as well. And ideally, using the bow itself as a tool if you have one. So if you're having too much trouble using a heavier bow, then yeah, you can exercise, but it's pretty hard actually. So yeah, one of those things. You can. Actually, yeah, you're right, Amazement. You know, shooting a, yeah. I mean, I might have to film it. I don't want to film and shoot, but I just let the camera run. That's actually not a bad idea. Should I? Should I just use the path? I mean, it's gonna be there's a 50-meter shoot and a 30-meter shoot, and I could just plunk arrows at 30 meters. I have no sight settings anyway, but like, why the hell not? Yeah, why not? Yeah, it's gonna be a bad shoot because I have no clickers. I'll be like dropping, collapsing. But the bow is so good. That is, and I am tempted just to grab the Python, shoot my either the X10s, which would be insane. I might rip a few fledglings there. Oh, stabilize and mount a GoPro. That's interesting. Could be done. I've got a GoPro. But I haven't used it for quite a while. Not sure. I don't like the stab mounted GoPros because you drop the bow a lot, so you kind of flips around everywhere. It's cool a couple of times. Not sure if I want to do it though, but it's an option. I'm tempted to. The bow setup, everything is working. Today I did the center shot, very briefly. Like I've got it so that the sight is centered and the arrows it's properly calibrated for center shot, at least by eye. I haven't done precisely yet, but it's shootable. And the arrows fly well enough. I can group at 20 meters. I can get all gold at 20 meters. And that's a crappy form. So the sight is good enough at 20 meters. I don't have the same tight grouping with as my win with my proper calibrated bow. But I'm not shooting poorly either. Now the bow weight isn't set to what I want it to. It's still a little heavy. I mean, it's close to what I currently shoot, and I wanted to shoot a lighter draw weight. That's actually one of the limitations here. But I'm leaning towards using the Python, because when else will I use it, right? Let's just do it. I mean, I feel myself shooting it today just to get it shooting, just to get some footage. But to shoot a round with a half-calibrated bow, I think Nathan's right. Embrace the bad. Alright, I'll think about that. We'll bring the camera out tomorrow. We'll see what we do. Alright, guys, I'm going to have a bit of a break. I'm just really tired, but hopefully you found this Q&A interesting. So, thanks for joining me, guys. It's a long one, but thanks for hanging around. I'll be doing a form check video very shortly. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. I've got quite a few videos to go through, but yeah, hopefully I'll see you all soon. This is NUSensei, and I'll see you all next time.